So here I am in my mother's basement, which must mean we're on our Christmas stream. You have all traveled across the country, insofar as you travel, maybe it was across town, are assembling with your families over the next few days, and the great debate begins. What shall we watch on television or on the movies, or shall we go to the movies, or in fact, of course, everybody's just going to end up watching Stranger Things, which I find a very interesting effect of their streaming that next week on Christmas Day. I anticipate great debates over, in fact, whether or not that counts as a Christmas movie as it's happening. However, we on the Mosaic Arc want to do the proper contextualization of the media, make a bit of a journey back into time, see whether nostalgia being a great theme of ours over the last several weeks in the Mosaic Arc, can figure out whether or not Die Hard is in fact a Christmas movie. Welcome to the Mosaic Arc. Welcome. So we have a special treat tonight on the Mosaic Arc, seeing as Casey and I have been muddling through the whole Stranger Things breakdown for the past several weeks. We needed some help. we needed some help to think properly about movies and particularly the identity of the Christmas movies. And for our special guest tonight, we have an old friend, the first person in my entire media career to actually invite me on television. So there you go. This is you can say my very first actual appearance in a television studio was thanks to Tyler. Tyler has had me on his shows, several different shows. You are a great entrepreneur of different film critical episodes, but most recently, I believe it's accurate to say, Tyler has been writing for Geeks Under Grace. Accurate?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I'm all over the internet nowadays.
Oh, this is why you're so hard to identify. But
yes.
the what we're going to be talking about tonight and what we've advertised is that you are going to help us think through what is a Christmas movie by way of a book that you've recently published. And if you could tell us a little bit about where you're coming from with the book, that will get us going.
Sure. So on November 1st, I self-published a book called Is Die Hard a Christmas Movie? And Other Questions About the True Meaning of Christmas Films. Um, it, of all the, I was at a cigar lounge last night and I was talking with some other authors about it, and they were talking about their works about, Russian philosophy. And I said, well, I'm a purveyor of trivialities. So but it came out of just kind of it came out of a lot of conversations I was having years ago, just kind of debates I was having with other people, and just a very kind of curious fascination with trying to figure out what Christmas movies were, because I noticed it was a strange genre that people interact with differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that people will get very, very passionate about, but they interact with it in a way that you don't interact with other films, because most films you don't block off to, I can only watch this either one day or 1 month of the year, or I'm not going to watch this film between January and October. Like there's not a lot of genres where that's a thing. I mean, you can watch Groundhog Day any time of the year, or Planes, Trains, and Automobiles any time of the year, but you can't do that with Christmas movies. And so I kind of wanted to dig into it and see what was under the surface a little bit. And the thing I found very quickly is that no one knows anything about Christmas movies. At least
Is there
from a
such a thing as a
genre.
Christmas movie? This is
Well,
I
this well
by
this
the end of it, by the end of reading your book, I have to admit I'm not sure whether there is such a thing as
I
a Christmas movie. I need some persuading now. I think that, you're right. It's a well, in carry on.
and I think the Die Hard question is fun because it's almost like a Christian heresy. Like it's the kind of thing that emerges amidst a tension, and then the tension just ruptures into a schism because now the question is, well, here's this edge case. Is the edge case proof of one definition or another definition? And everyone on the internet doesn't really have a clear answer for that because there are so many different ways you could tackle it. Where I mean, do we go with something like just like very platonic ideal? A Christmas movie is a Christmas movie. It is what it is. It's the best possible version of what it is. Or is it just a thing? Is it a thing in the world? Is it just a movie you happen to put on? And I'm more or less in the first camp, like the platonic camp that says no, there is an actual thing called a Christmas movie. We all assent to it. Anyone who watches a Christmas movie every year assents to the idea that there is such a thing as a Christmas movie, but you try putting it into words, the whole issue falls apart very very quickly.
And yet here
And that's
you have
kind of what I
published
set
a
out to.
book that you wrote.
Yes.
So
I wrote 12. It wrote 13 chapters, more or less, trying to get to the answer of that. I think I ultimately did. It took writing the book to figure out what the answer was, and then I had to retroactively write it back into the book after finishing it, which I guess not the first time that's happened, but it was very much a project of, okay, can I actually come up with a definition here, or is this just going to be 200 pages of speculation? I think I did ultimately come to something, but it is challenging, and you butt up into a lot of definitions, you butt up into a lot of tendencies in people, a lot of the way people interact with the arts, people trolling just because it's funny. So it can be difficult.
okay.
So could you distill it in one short description? This defines a Christmas movie. What would you say?
The conclusion I ultimately came to is that Christmas movies are incarnational. So they contain within it the spirit of Christmas or some connection to the divine in some sense. Because obviously you watch a lot of Christmas movies and they're very mean spirited, or they're not religious, or they're secular, or anything along those lines. But I think Christmas is kind of like the third rail, and a Christmas movie is something that grabs onto it in such a way that it becomes filled with the spirit to some degree, and that spirit is what defines the genre.
So what do you mean by incarnational?
Well, I mean, in the Christian sense, obviously, the idea of something coming into the world and becoming a part of it. Christmas movies are obviously a reflection of Christmas, which is a religious and a secular holiday. And I do an entire chapter on the book just kind of about that divide, that Venn diagram of, is Christmas secular, or is it too secular, or is it not religious enough? All those sorts of questions. But because it is a holiday about the indwelling of God into the world and coming down and being born in the person of Christ, at least if you're Christian. Like, obviously, if you're not Christian, it's a day in December, but it's also more than that. But because it is about that, something about the nature of the holiday fills whatever is working through it. So, a Christmas tree takes on more meaning than a regular tree. A Christmas movie takes on more meaning than a regular movie, just because it's attached to Christmas to some degree. So
now, what I find interesting about the whole is Die Hard a Christmas movie is that Lethal Weapon came out about a year before that, and it takes place at Christmas too. But I would never consider that to be a Christmas movie. but I do consider Die Hard to be one.
I seem to have put the slides in the wrong place. Sorry, I'm going backwards now.
Well, there are people that would say Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie of some sort. I mean, I've seen as video essayists and writers talk about the works of Shane Black, which also include like The Nice Guys and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang as Christmas movies too, even though they're of the same lineage as Lethal Weapon of action movies set at Christmas. But Die Hard's a fascinating one because it's become the meme movie that everyone wants to debate.
I couldn't. Yeah, right. It's spectacular and sparkly, and Christmas is the Christmas celebration is a big part of it because they invade during an office Christmas party. But there's also some really interesting symbolism going on in the movie too, I thought.
Well, yeah, and there's a very good case to be made that it is a Christmas movie based on both the symbolism of this family coming together during the holidays, and the idea of reunion and justice being brought into the world.
Right.
Even at a textual level, and even just at the level of the text with the Christmas music, with all the decorations, with characters saying "ho ho ho," and then there's just decorations all over the place in the film. So aesthetically and subtextually, there is an argument for that.
Right. It takes place in the City of Angels, and he comes to save his wife named Holy, right? It's so symbolic. And at the end of the movie, if you wanted to have a discussion about the commercialization of Christmas, well, they blow up all the loot in the vault, and it just goes flying all over the place. So lots of symbolism there. Hans Gruber also said it's Christmas; it's the time of miracles. So
now I have a machine gun. Ho ho ho.
Yeah.
So, but I'm gonna play the Grinch on all this. That Tyler, I liked your incarnational definition, and I thought that you seem to be struggling with it because on the one hand you give us this Platonic definition that fits with so it has this element of, I would say incarnational is, the sacred breaking into the historical. It's the entry of God into history. So, Christ enters through Mary into time, into our embodied, fallen, violent world. And that therefore the sense that there is at Christmas, this, the angels, coming near the earth, as the hymns, the carols say it. And that Christmas movies, by way of, and I thought your most persuasive part of your definition is people will recognize a Christmas movie because it'll be the one that they fight over whether or not they can watch it any other time. We've had this in our chat discussion that there's, if you're not allowed to watch Home Alone in July, it's a Christmas movie. But Die Hard was actually released in July. So like the very first people who ever watched it didn't watch it at Christmas.
In July.
They watched it in July, and therefore it was almost, the joke of the movie in its blockbuster releases. Here's this movie that's set at Christmas, but you're watching it in the summer. So there's I thought that interestingly,
that was a lost opportunity on their part.
Well, but like exactly what kind of opportunity was it that, although Tyler, you give this liturgical incarnational claim, your proof is actually much more Aristotelian than Platonic. If you say it's like that, you have I was trying to fiddle around with getting the table of contents up. I had not realized it's 12 chapters, right? So we have the 12 chapters of Christmas. Very nicely done.
Yes.
Right. The sneaky hidden symbolism. But if we just help people going through, we have, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Is A Christmas Story actually good? It's all questions. Is Elf the last Christmas classic? Does The Grinch show Christmas as too consumeristic? Why does Christmas make action movies better? And so forth. That and in each of these situations, you explore the particular examples, which by the end of your book, I'm not sure that I persuaded that any of them passed your Platonic definition.
Well, that is the problem that arises. I mean, there is a case to be made for an Aristotelian, down to earth definition of Christmas movies, but the other side of that is it opens up so much subjectivism that it becomes chaotic. I mean, any people bring up like all sorts of weird ones as like edge cases, like is Brazil a Christmas movie, or
Yeah, I didn't get that at all. I saw that question. Can you explain that?
is the Brazil? Well, Brazil
Yeah.
is set at Christmas, like and
I don't. It's one of my favorite movies, and I don't even remember that it was set at Christmas.
well, there's the famous scene where they misspelled a guy's name and they break into his Christmas party. So they're just hanging out around the tree while the people are raiding their house. So it is
I gotta watch it
perpetually in the
again.
background. It is a thing in the movie, but it's not part of the text, and it obviously isn't trying to make you feel like there's a Christmas spirit to it. But I mean, it is technically another edge case movie where you could say,
Hmm.
in some sense, it's a Christmas movie, but no one's ever going to say, you can't watch Brazil in August. It's like it's
I
so I
I'd say
I
you
think
can't watch it during Christmas. It's really dark. I mean, I like it, but it's super dark.
well like yeah, exactly. So like it doesn't have that Christmas movie feel that kind of adds to the liturgical nature of the holiday. So yeah,
Right.
I would say it's an extreme edge case, but it's one of those things where you start seeing the definition break down, and that's where people start bringing up like the weird, really far out there ones. Like I had a list in there of just all the movies where Christmas is even tangentially involved that you
Right.
could reasonably call a Christmas movie. Um,
Well, we
one of the
have we
James
have
Bond
in the
movies.
chat, Yawn God is saying obviously the best Christmas movie is the documentary Eyes Wide Shut by
Oh,
Fringe director
oh.
Stanley Kubrick. and John Abrissi is reminding us that Christmas is in summer in half the world, but it's not in July anywhere. It's
Yeah, but not the good half.
It is in the correct countries.
well, but it's always in December, and we okay. So we are not going to in this stream debate the date of Christmas. That's another question. But I do. So I think we need to play with some of these edge cases. I realize that but the problem is by the end of your book, and I'm just to a certain extent playing devil's advocate here. They were all fringe cases. That we have the Grinch movies, we have the Scrooge movies, we have the Santa Claus movies, we have the Hallmark movies, which I had a phenomenon I was not at all aware of really at all until I was reading your description of them. We have the action movies, the rom-coms. That you make the very good point that almost none of them have anything to do with Mass or Christ. I mean, and to say that they're set in the time when people are having the parties and listening to the songs, right? You have the carols. If it's a Christmas movie because the carols are playing in the background, and that's the Mariah Carey problem. It's like if you have to listen to her songs for 2 months, is everybody just sick of it, right? You don't want it in July because you've heard it for 2 months solid in November,
I'm very pro
December.
Mariah Carey, just so you know.
Well, okay, but
I
the
actually like that song.
the edge cases, see, it seemed to me testing on the edge cases was the better option because it's, but ironically, everything turned into an edge case, and you yourself found that there almost none of them are actually about the Christ story. When I
Well,
was reading it, I started thinking I can't think of any. The little drummer boy came close, right? But that's a
I mean, you'll notice throughout the book, the most persistent group I go after is fundamentalist Protestants
mm.
who are like really, really fussy over whether or not you should like celebrate Christmas at all. Because so I'm very, me being my grumpy Anglican self, I am very much pro in terms of these Christmas movies are still in communication with the Christian holiday, even if they aren't strictly about mass or the nature of the incarnation. They're speaking through to something, even though they don't themselves contain the overt language of how you and I as Christians would celebrate Christmas. And even some of them do. I mean, there's examples in the book on the chapter on why are some Christmas movies more religious, where I do cite specific examples, The Bishop's Wife, It's a Wonderful Life, things like that, where there actually is a direct spiritualism that comes into the world and has an influence. But
As a medievalist and as a Catholic, I beg to differ, and I'm going to make you prove it.
on the bishop's wife, or
No,
which one?
just like generally. So we have some pictures here of some examples. You and Casey need to hash out Die Hard up
Yeah.
here.
Die Hard.
bit
No, okay,
further.
I wanted to say one more thing about
because I will say that Tyler, you said you started your book because there was an office Christmas tree that people were invited to get put ornaments on, and you found that
Yeah.
everybody was saying, what's your favorite Christmas movie, and everybody put Die Hard, and you're like, what? So it's your.
I
Yeah,
was
it's funny.
I mean, I was annoyed by the puckishness of it because I was going into it like, oh, I'm going to get to find out a little bit about all my coworkers, and the thing I learned about all my coworkers is that they're all ironic and sarcastic. It's like, I wanted the sincerity element to it, and I wasn't getting it.
They were sincere. They think it's a Christmas movie.
That may be true, but there is an element to it where some of the Die Hard discourse is ironic, or a lot of the Die Hard discourse is ironic. Or obviously, there's a very vocal group that is very sincere that it is a Christmas movie, but there's also people that troll and do it because they think it's funny.
Casey thinks it's a Christmas movie.
No, I do think it's a Christmas movie. And as I was saying before we started, I don't remember, because this is an old movie. I don't remember when it first came out, whether or not I thought it was a Christmas movie. It was clearly themed around Christmas, and it happened at Christmas. And it's about the most disastrous thing that could possibly happens on Christmas, which reminded me of this. Reminded me of Luke 2:8-14. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly army praising God. God created a beachhead in Bethlehem when Christ was born. It was dangerous. And so dangerous things happen during this movie when he tries to save Holly. So I thought that was kind of interesting symbolism.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not-
there is a level of violence and conflict to a lot of Christmas movies, but I think one of the things that you see in the ones people tend to associate with I cannot watch this in the month of August is a kind of quality that they always invert towards the spirit of Christmas, even no matter what happens in it. You'll watch a movie like Christmas Vacation, and it's a very sarcastic 1980s comedy where all the values of all the characters in question are kind of deflated the whole time, and everyone kind of fails. But by the end of it, it kind of bends around into something cheerful and spirited, even though everything in the movie had kind of not worked towards it. Go ahead.
I think the reason Christmas Vacation works so well and has lasted this long as a popular movie is because so many people can relate to it. That relate to Clark wanting to have the perfect nostalgic Christmas like he remembers when he was a kid, and then you find out, well, it wasn't exactly how you remember. You have a child's memories of this, but the adult's memories are very different because everybody's always trying to make it perfect, and that is people connecting with Christ on that day in a way, because they're trying to make things lovely for their family, and they're trying to be loving and joyful. And it's nearly impossible under some circumstances.
Well, you see a little bit of that. You see a little bit of that God coming into the world there, because you have the ideal in Clark's head, and then you have the reality of messy people and family, and they all they come together in the holiday in this weird way, and it kind of brings everyone together by the end of it.
Okay, yeah. But you could do that with a Thanksgiving movie. That people.
There aren't that many Thanksgiving movies, though. That's the thing. It's a different. I actually did a whole piece last month saying that Thanksgiving isn't really a genre for movies. So, but
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the only one I can think of, and I never actually. I know I'm in the minority here. I do not like that movie at all. It just makes me sad.
I did a rather exhaustive. I did a rather exhaustive taxonomy of Thanksgiving movies, and I was shocked by how few there were. It's like for the most part, you can count them on two hands, and most of them are bad comedies. That's about it. Like that's about it.
Okay, so very few Thanksgiving movies. Is there any other holiday that we get? Halloween, I suppose. You get the horror movies.
Yeah,
they get a whole genre.
Yeah. Okay, they get a whole genre. Easter. I mean, you have the Passion. I mean, any adult Christ movie is basically an Easter movie.
You could make a case for Easter, but that's a little bit more of a. It's such a overtly religious holiday that you can't really do the secular version of it without looking a little bit foolish.
They
I mean, every once
tried
in a while, there's
with
there's one of those like Easter Bunny movies or something, but
yeah.
like those things are kind of lame. So it doesn't have that core mythology and potency that you get with a Christmas movie.
Anything, yeah. Also, any kind of Easter thing you would be focusing on would be more devotional than entertainment. I think even the movies that are made seem even like Jesus of Nazareth from the 70s is I think more devotional than entertaining because they did Farrelly did a good job on it. It's a
Or
very different
Jesus
movie
Christ
than the Passion of the
Superstar.
Christ
Yeah. Okay,
or
but
Jesus Christ Superstar. Yeah,
but this counter is rather interesting. So it means that you can make genre movies that are Christmas movies that aren't really devotional, but they're still Christmas movies, which you can't make movies like at Easter because that would be actually spiritual. But Christmas has the character that it does because of its incarnational quality.
It's more or less just a Venn diagram. I mean, that's the whole point of the second chapter where I talk about the history of Christmas being secularized.
Tell us
Where
in detail about the second chapter. That's the one you sent me to look at before when your book came out.
yes, because it was
Yes.
the one I thought was the most important to get right, because it's the one where I'm making actual historical claims.
Tell us the story of Christmas.
Well, it's this. I mean,
it's a good chapter.
a lot of things. It begins with the
liked
Reformation, but I mean the fact that the Reformation happened and that you have things like A Christmas Carol. Christmas became kind of this strange two-track holiday where you have the feast day version of the holiday and the secular holiday, and they're moving in the same direction at all times, and they exist in this strange Venn diagram where a lot of things are intermingled between the two, but there are some things that are distinctly secular and some things that are distinctly religious, and those things sometimes don't meet, but they're so interwoven together a lot of the time that you can't take them apart. Like you mean, obviously you could take like a secular Christmas movie and say this isn't strictly speaking about Christmas as I celebrated at the altar or before the altar. But it is there's still little elements of it to it because you can't really fully shoo away the religiosity from it. I mean, as I mentioned in the book, the fact that Christmas is more popular than Easter is evidence that it's become very, very secularized because traditionally Christmas is less important than Easter. But for in our culture today, Christmas is a larger holiday than Easter, which says to me that there's something it's been inflated to some degree, and there's reasons why. A lot of it has to do with money. A lot of it has to do with the way people celebrate it as something where there are non-religious aspects. But those things are not always mutually exclusive.
I'm encouraging you to continue to unpack that. We've talked before in the Mosaic Arc about the history of Christmas, but I thought you did a very nice job in that chapter. It's not just the Reformation happens and then things get complicated. There's a very interesting development specifically in modernity that gives us the quality of the problem that we're wrestling with. So the Puritans come along and say Christmas is pagan and therefore we don't celebrate it anyway, and that is that I like pointing that out in the favorite place I like pointing that out is in Robinson Crusoe, when he's on his island and he's keeping a diary, and he's so he's so Protestant at that point that he doesn't even have an entry for December 25th in his diary. It's like, December 24th it rained, December 26th, the goat ran away or something like that, right? I don't know.
It's almost like a superstition.
Yeah, you couldn't even name it. And this is, of course, before he goes through his prayer awakening and starts keeping his own festivals and so forth. But that ironic, and this is the irony of what you just said, Tyler, as we had this celebration that a whole swath of Christianity rejected utterly. And now it's become the even more important feast of Christians than what should be the main feast, which is Easter. How did the paradox there is intense.
It is, and obviously, as someone who does care about liturgy and the proper role of how one's supposed to live out their life throughout the year, that is. But I also don't think it's a problem, strictly speaking, to be fixed.
Okay.
The chapter on Mariah Carey, backlash towards the secular kind of kitschy elements of Christmas, where we do kick back
Mm.
at it for being gross and kitschy and consumeristic because it does those things. But on the other hand, those kitsch is not always a bad thing, and it's something that can be reasonably processed if a person has their internal hierarchy in order, where they're not just they're not going out of order of how they should be living their life. So it is something that can be worked through and that's again my point. The point about the my grumpiness towards the fundamentalists throughout the book is I keep kicking back at them because I'm like I don't want to just purgate the mind of all things Christmas like all these TikTokers do every year, where they're like, I have stopped celebrating Christmas this year because I don't like the pagans, and like, no, there's a gradient here. We can deal with it. As long as you have your ducks in order and your faith is sound and you know what you're doing, these things are fine. You can like Mariah Carey, you can like Christmas Vacation, and even put on your Catholic goggles and say, oh, there's what's the Chesterton quote? It's only Christians can appreciate pagan things. It's like you can do that.
So John
Yeah,
Abrisi,
the pagans.
John Abrisi is interesting. Wasn't the incarnation a gift? Oh wait, no, gift sounds like grift. Wait. So, there's and Jan God is suggesting the Lord of the Rings for Christmas movies.
So because it set out on the 25th. Yeah.
Yeah. They set out from Rivendell on the 25th. Casey, what were you about to say?
I gotta try to remember now.
I'm trying to actually read the chat this time. I got grief from.
I know you're good. You're doing a good job with it. All right, not the pagans. It's like the pagans weren't wrong for celebrating things. They were just celebrating the wrong thing. So now we're Christian. Now we're celebrating the right things. The problem wasn't the celebration. The problem was who the celebration was aimed towards, and it was aimed towards the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So now we're aimed in the right direction.
It's Dante's disordered loves. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a bad thing to celebrate Christ's birth. And ironically, I've met a lot of Puritan-esque Protestants who say, well, it doesn't say you're supposed to celebrate Christmas in the Bible, so I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, that's just an incredibly boring way to live. Okay, you do what you want to do,
it's sad. It is a sad way to live.
Well, let's
that yells about Christmas on TikTok. So
okay, let's work through some of your examples that you dealt with. I actually thought, I mean, the Die Hard. So Casey, your explanation is that there's symbolic levels in things like the names. I saw a neat meditation on how John and Hans are the same name. So there's
interesting.
It's Johannes and John. So Hans is actually the anti-John, if you make that. So you could say that which of them is pointing to the truth of the story? Which one's the herald?
One wants to save his family, another one wants to get filthy stinking rich by stealing a bunch of stuff.
So in that level, it's like which one of them points to the truth of our to the goodness, right? But then you do end up with the problem of it's the same problem we're having when we're trying to read Behind the Duffers and their Stranger Things thing. It's like, do we see it, and is it actually there on purpose, or did they just why are Hans and John's name actually the same? Holly, Hans, and John, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have this.
Yeah, that's not an accident.
Okay. Well, what about you? You had your next example in our slides was Lethal Weapon, which is it the same kind of problem as Die Hard, or is it different? It's an action movie. They're both action movies.
Well, it's also a movie about an unconventional family coming together during the holidays, despite Mel Gibson's erratic behavior, and Danny Glover kind of adopting him and recognizing him for what he is and welcoming him. So there is a Christmas turnaround in that film, and I'd say there's a roughly equal case to be made that it and Die Hard are both equally Christmas movies. If that's what you want to, if that's the case, if you want to make the case that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, then by the same logic, I would say Lethal Weapon is.
So why doesn't the internet have debates about Lethal Weapon, and they do have it about Die Hard?
That is $1 million question, and it has everything to do with the way the internet just hyperfixates on things, I'm sure. I mean, I mean, I could pull out like a standalone complex implication and say, like, in the grand deterministic scheme of the universe, everything has, it on some matter of fact level, it had to be Die Hard that was the debate, because that was just the way the pathways of the internet and the human brain work. But I couldn't tell you exactly why. But Die Hard's also just a more popular movie nowadays, I think, than Lethal Weapon.
Well, Die Hard's also more overtly Christmas themed throughout the entire thing takes place in one night.
Maybe.
Like Santa coming, right? Ho ho ho.
Mm.
So it's more concentrated Christmas, whereas it's just kind of the seasonal backdrop for a couple of weeks long story.
You're saying
Lethal
John
Weapon.
McClane's thing is a kind of typology there. It's a there's
Maybe?
a
Well, okay. What about the next one? It's a Wonderful Life.
Well, where do you want to start with It's a Wonderful Life? Because I mean, if there is a canonical Christmas movie, that's about as close as you're going to get. Even though I do air some quibbles about that in the book, but for the most part, that's about as canonical as you're going to get.
Yeah, because it ends at Christmas Eve, at midnight, when it turns to Christmas Day, and it's kind of like the long dark night of the soul he was having ends at midnight, and it's Christmas Day. It's and yet it's not specifically about Christmas.
And that's the quibble I was addressing a little bit in the book, is that 2/3 of the movie, especially all the flashbacks, are not specifically Christmas related, but it all does pay off, like you said, in that great Christmas miracle of everyone's prayers coming together and saving this man's life in every sense of the word. And it is more overtly spiritual and religious than the majority of the films on the list, especially because Capra wanted it to be specifically a movie. I think he said specifically he wanted this to be a movie to fight atheism. So it just like no holds barred. It's like I want angels in the movie. So I'd say to some degree it's among the platonic ideal of what a Christmas movie can be, and now, especially nowadays, it's everyone just associates it as the Christmas movie, even more so than a movie like maybe Miracle on 34th Street, which is more about Christmas in the text. So again, a lot of this it almost feels a lot of there is no like canon process for Christmas, for what is and isn't a Christmas movie, but the consensus is strange about what does and doesn't get to the top sometimes.
You know what's funny about Miracle on 34th Street, the original, is that it was really a movie about Santa more than Christmas. And when they remade it a couple of times. The last time they remade it in the early 90s or the mid 90s. And it was so much more overtly religious in that one than the original, which I was very pleased to see. But it was kind of a strange turnaround, because you would expect, post-war America in the 1940s to be more religious. Frank Capra did show that he wanted that to be, but it took 50 years to get Miracle on 34th Street produced, where they actually get married in a Catholic church because Saint Nicholas arranged it with the priest to marry them. So that was fun.
But it does seem to me, though, that I mean, like with It's a Wonderful Life, it's the angel shows him that his life is valuable,
right?
Yeah.
And so he doesn't kill himself.
Very cheery.
Well, but I mean, and you could say, well, what if the angel was simply an alien that could make him look back over, the alternative past? It still doesn't seem to me, playing devil's advocate, that it's necessarily Christian. And you've also said this, that we've ended up in this curious place where part of the ritual of Christmas now is to have the fight over whether or not it took over from a pagan celebration, which is nonsense, but there we go. Part of it is to have the fight over the way in which, we don't seem to ever recognize the spirit of Christmas because we're too busy buying gifts for people, which is what John is saying, but gifts are Christmas because the incarnation is a gift. That we are, and this is what I wanted to get to from the chapter 2 where you go through the history. Most of our customs for Christmas are 19th century. It's a great frustration for me as a medievalist because everybody always like, what medieval traditions do we have from in our Christmas celebrations? And most of the time it's like, none.
It started with Washington Irving in
Exactly.
1920.
Yes.
It's nothing, so Christmas trees, I think there are trees that were decorated in the Middle Ages, but if you think like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is literally set at Christmas, it's an entirely, focused on Christmas. The main Christmas event is the feast where everybody's having a big dinner, and that King Arthur liked having games at Christmas. But most people would like say, but how is that Christmas? It's where's the tree? Where's the presents? Where's with shopping and trees, that's Victorian. And Santa too.
Well, very German, right?
If I can pull Cardinal Newman into the discussion, I guess the question is, is the stream pure downstream, or are these valid developments? So what is it we want out of this?
Indeed, these are fair questions.
And the case I make throughout the book is that they are valid, at least to some degree, and as long as it's for people that do have their personal hierarchy in an order. Because if you are going out there and just being like, I'm going to spend $10,000 on Black Friday and then not go to mass for the entire month of December, like, okay, you don't have to be religious to celebrate this holiday, but like even just at the most rudimentary level, that is unhealthy. So like, there are ways you can do it, and you can incorporate the secular side of the holiday and understand it within the light of the incarnation and in the spirit of the holiday as it's meant to be. And there's ways you can do it really wrong, and the Puritans are going to look at that and say those weird people are wassailing the wrong way and disrespecting Christ. Like, sometimes they are, but not always, and that's kind of the distinction that is important.
Right. The Puritans kind of threw out the baby with the bathwater. They wanted everybody to remember the importance of Christ, but then to not remember it publicly or ostentatiously or with any kind of joy.
Yeah.
Which is weird because they weren't completely joyless people, but they were very superstitious when it came to what were Catholic holy days that they rejected.
Well, the irony about Christmas is they wanted it to be a market day, and guess what? It became one. I mean, if you're worried about Christmas being overly commercialized and people do nothing but buy and sell on it, thank the Puritans. I did do a blog post about that ages ago. It's like, if you're worried, if all of the things that you claim have happened to Christmas were the Puritan, rejection of it as a literal feast, as opposed to, you have the Advent fast, which we're supposed to be having now. And then the feast was supposed to go on for 12 days, and it was literally a feast. I wonder how much people, like, Thanksgiving is a feast, how much people now think of the Christmas dinner as actually the center point of it, as opposed to the presents and the trees and the carols and in the Middle Ages it was the dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do talk about that a little in the conclusion chapter too, that our current practice of Christmas is very unbalanced, and especially it creates a lot of burnout by the 26th, where everyone's just done with it and they don't want to touch Christmas afterward.
And that's why movies like Christmas Vacation are so resonant with people, because they're exhausted, and the meal was a big part of their family gathering and their celebration. So I think, people still do it, depending upon, I guess, what microculture they came from within the country and within other countries. But yeah, it's yeah.
Well, that's one of the fascinating themes about a lot of these movies is a lot of them actually do acknowledge these problems, and they still find a way to kind of lean into the holiday while kind of venting those frustrations.
Yes.
I mean, there's how many Christmas movies are there that say Christmas is too commercialized, and then they commercialize those movies? Like, it's this very strange cycle where it's like, oh, Christmas isn't about the things, it's about being together and going to church and doing all this stuff. and then they make a million Snoopy plushies. Like
So
The Grinch
it's
plushies. That's the Grinch plushies win.
oh yeah,
one of
the Grinch is becoming the more popular one nowadays. But
yeah, I want that Grinch cookie jar, I have to admit. But one of the things I read about that today was that the Charlie Brown Christmas special, where he wanted to reject the aluminum tree, that apparently the aluminum trees were really popular until that cartoon came out, and then nobody wanted them anymore, and they kind of went out of fashion completely.
oops.
So it had the opposite effect.
We have a report from Europe. So Jan God says, as someone who lives deep in Catholic Europe, the dinner and even the lunch is the main thing. So there you go. It's it's
so my
it's
husband's
in Europe.
family too. It's from Northern Ireland. Same thing. Christmas dinner is a big thing, and they also don't have Thanksgiving. So we're all done. A lot of people are all done feasting. I will never be able to give up Thanksgiving before I ever give up Christmas dinner. but it's tough to keep the eating feasts going that long.
Right, but it's okay.
You can fast the entire month of December and make it work. So
I should be doing that. Yeah.
Well, it occurs to
Every
me
year I said I'm going to, and then I just don't. That's on me.
It occurs to me that the thing that we're coming up with, it's like Tyler, you're talking about how, or in Casey, you're saying this too, that the Christmas movies are all about how we've lost the spirit of Christmas, so we need to recover it. Which, you could say that's one of the things that makes great storytelling, right? It's like there's conflict. So it's harder to make the story. It started to make the Easter stories. I mean, the Easter stories, whether or not you have compassion for Christ at his crucifixion, like the Passion is focusing on, or something. But maybe it's the lack of conflict over the holiday that makes it less likely to make the movies. Whereas with Christmas, it's like it's literally baked into the problem every single time. Is there such a thing as the spirit of Christmas? Oh, well, we have a plot. It's like, the Hallmark movies, the plot has to be the same, that they end up in a romance of some sort. Great. You can run those for every single story can be exactly the same, but people will still want them because the conflict is the thing that drives it. And certainly it makes, we've got Scrooged, right? You had a chapter on the different Scrooge movies that I found very interesting, saying that Scrooge is, of all of the Christmas movies, Scrooge, and therefore another Victorian element, Dickens and his Victorian element. All of the great actors want to play Scrooge.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing is a lot of the big actors you'd think would be great Scrooges, like they're mediocre Scrooges, because there's just so many that have tried at this point.
It's better than Hamlet. It's
yeah, I didn't. Yeah, that wasn't good.
What?
Well, he's still a good actor,
favorite. No, he's a wonderful actor, but I didn't like his Scrooge, and I actually didn't like oh my, I can't remember this, George C. Scott. Every time I see this man's in my head, I want to say Patton. Yeah, fantastic actor, and his Scrooge was okay, but I'm trying to think who was my favorite one. Actually, I like Albert Finney. I know you didn't like that one in your book.
That was the theater kid one. That was the one that was the most it brought up the most traumatic memories from high school theater. So but I like the George C. Scott one. There's something about his Virginianness that just contrasts so deeply with everything else in the Victorian English setting. I wonder if watching it in England might make it a little bit more shocking. But
maybe that was what I was seeing, because that was she was too genteel, and that's not who Scrooge was. Maybe when a Virginian is acts curmudgeonly, that's the best they can do because they're so used to being polite.
But to your point on the previous discussion, Christmas has this weird self-replicating cycle to it where things are constantly fueling the problems, which then fuel the solutions, which then fuel the problems, which then fuel the solutions. And if you try to untangle it, you just can't find the bottom, you can't find where the end of the string is. So in Christmas movies definitely play into that, where a lot of it's just blowing off steam from the problems created by our current model of Christmas. So again, the question comes up: do we throw out all the developments and say none of this, we don't do anything, or do we incorporate it, which is generally what I lean towards, and that's a question beyond my personal scope as someone who's writing a book about Christmas movies, but it does kind of lean into the difficulty of the overall problem, which is, how do you define this Christmas movie in the first place? I was like, oh, well, here's a chasm you can descend, and you can figure it out at the bottom.
I'm convinced though that it's like the Puritans did us the biggest favor, because they set up the conflict, which, as I've just been reading Gavin Ashenden's Substack recently, and he points out that English Heritage has done something of late where they're always having to bring up, here's the pagan origins of this, that, or the other. So it's like Chestertonian levels of Christians are the ones that understand what pagans were like, but we have to keep rehearsing that. It's like, it's almost as if the rehearsal of Christianity replaces paganism. So we have to do this every year. It's part of the liturgy to say, the true meaning of Christmas is this reiteration of, and we were fallen, and we were fallen, and we were fallen, and we have to just keep, every time you come back, I mean, maybe they're Christmas movies because they're actually Advent movies. You start in the place where you've lost all sense of God's presence. You had the Scrooge one, but you also had the Bill Murray Scrooged, which
Yes.
you really liked that one, Tyler. It seemed you had.
I love that one too.
Yeah.
I love it in parts. It's not one of my favorites,
Mhm.
but I think it's very interesting in context with the other movies, especially because there is a lot of dialogue with the other ones, and just the transplant of the setting, and then the fact that it gives Bill Murray this very long soliloquy at the end where he's having his meltdown and comes out the other end of it with some sort of inspiration. It is impressive in places, but it's definitely, if you follow the chapter on Scrooge adaptations, they really start getting weirdly novel by the end of it. So that was kind of where that starts to turn a little bit. So,
well, it went that really long monologue at the end that you talked about is it's part of the incorporation of pagan pagan celebrations when he said, I have to kiss this girl on the lips. It's the law, right? And it was a very funny line. But it's a really nice example of, how we did incorporate kind of, pagan things. I have to put that in scare quotes because I don't actually know if that was a pagan thing. We've always been told it was a pre-Christian kind of celebration thing. But
anytime I hear someone say this thing in Christmas was pagan, I immediately say, I need to spend an entire afternoon on Google to figure out if that's true or not, because there's a greater than 50% chance it's not. And even if it is pagan, it's so irrelevant that it doesn't matter. Like,
right. Or some guy just wanted to kiss some cute girl once and said, hey, our pagan ancestors did this. Come over here.
Pagan ancestors breathed
at a Christmas party.
Too, but like,
well, our pagan ancestors converted to Christianity, so that's always the greats. Like, I want to be like the pagans. Yeah. Great, do what they did.
I found one source that said that mulling wine has pagan sources, and I put the point of the book is like, what's the point of that? At this point, I'm not mulling my wine for some sort of occult benefit. I'm doing it because I like the taste of it. Like, at what point has the practice been so thoroughly purgated that it's irrelevant?
You have pagan taste buds, apparently. Yeah.
Well, but that is the point. And so as I was reading your book, and I was thinking about this problem. It's like, what would a real Christmas movie be? And I'm getting happier now because I realize the conflict over what is a real Christmas movie is the point. That you are in this sorrow and absence of we're reiterating it rather than the reality, right? But the absence of grace, the actual descent into paganism, which is despairing, and as Chesterton says, you really don't want to be there because you have no idea how much Christ's coming has in fact transformed the world. You can't imagine. You can only catch an echo of what it was like to be in paganism from what Christians had to stand up against. Although, alas and sorrowfully, we have been having to stand up against this a lot because people do want to go back to the cruel world of child sacrifice and the gift you can't give gifts to the demon gods. You make them, you make exchanges with them, and they take everything anyway, right?
Mhm.
And the Christ's coming, the gift to us is to rescue us from that horror. How would you show that? I mean, how would you show the true horror of what it was like in pagan Rome, or in pagan well, the paganism of everything,
Well,
including
that's yeah.
the
We've talked.
unfulfilled temple worship, and that Jesus enters into all of this as the most fragile creature there could
Mhm.
be. Like I was thinking, it's like as a baby, what happens to babies in that world is what Herod had done to the innocents, which is they get killed.
Right. Which is why God had to create a beachhead, right?
Right,
Which
your
why they
horror,
were in
it's like
hiding.
the army that you're
Yeah.
imagining here. It's
Yep.
like, what would you, it's like to show the hosts of angels surrounding Jesus to keep him from being murdered instantly.
Exactly. That we talked about this before, Wendy, when you mentioned Rome, how shocking it is. And maybe this is why people don't have a clue what they're asking when they say, let's go back to our pagan roots, because they see this beautiful architecture, even in decay as it is right now, you can still see how beautiful it was and how much skill it took to build that. And you think, how could anybody who created something so beautiful have been so bad? Right. So I don't think they can wrap their heads around it, because all they see is the remnants of the beauty that they created.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see any of the evil. They can read about it, but they don't see it.
Well, they don't see the slavery. I mean, they're just not seeing that. They don't see the infanticide. They don't see, I mean, just you should, it's interesting because for Easter we do see it because it's the crucifixion, but
Right.
the sort of the the pagans celebrated the winter solstice, and it was all just about the return of the light and things like that. Yeah, they were throwing people into bogs and dogs too. We learned
Wells.
this in
And
our
lots of dogs.
We
Yeah.
just spent the whole last week with my dog being sick, and one of the things that we learned last week was that dogs were sacrificed in those bogs too.
Mhm.
That's the world we're
And horses.
missing. That bog dogs and sorry, that's funny because of the vowels, those phonemes, dogs, bogs. We were looking for rhymes and found
Yeah.
out that
This is this.
the bog sacrifices included not just girls, not just young men, horses, dogs, all of this, to pacify the bloodthirst of the pagan gods.
Or the bloodthirst of Herod, or just somebody who is consumed with envy.
Mm-hmm. Or the Grinch. Here, we got the Grinch here. There, like the bloodthirst of the Grinch, who is right. He is the image of what this pagan is. It's like we want to take
I want to destroy
everything
Christmas.
good that you have as a price.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they'll take all their things away from them, and then they'll have no joy, and they'll be sad, and I'll be glad that I'm not alone in my misery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's actually a wonderful story. I thought. I don't know anything about Theodore Geisel's religious background, or even if he had one, but I think he hit it right with the message of this, even though it was meant to be Christmas because they have a Christmas tree, but they gave it all these other fantastical names.
Well, that's the thing I talk about in chapter 2 a lot, is that the strange thing about the modern version of Christmas is that it's something that can be assented to even if you're not Christian. They talk about Irving Berlin and White Christmas, and out in a lot of the Rankin Bass specials. I mean, a lot of the people who worked on these were Jewish writers who obviously didn't believe in Christ, but something about the season was assentable in those contexts where it's strange because now we associate these are they're as Christian, not necessarily Christian, but they're as Christmassy as anything else. But it does have this strange multidimensionality to it where it does kind of assent to what we understand Christmas to be as a greater phenomenon in the great Venn diagram, but it obviously it is purely Christian spirit, which is strange. But
okay, now we have to fight you from the other direction. Yes, it's only Christianity has this spirit. No, I'm not budging on that, right? I've been fighting this for ages. Like you play this game of we play this game of, you know, we would be Christian even without Christ. It's like that's nonsense. Be nice to people. We're just going to find that magically in all religious traditions teach the same. No, they don't.
No, they don't. And in the writers that you point out that aren't Christian, they were still writing for a Christian audience and they were
Right.
living in a Christian culture. And so they were influenced by it and they understood exactly what these people were celebrating and what they
Yeah.
were looking for in secular entertainment.
I mean, obviously, all this is downstream of the fact that Christmas is a Christian holiday, unequivocally. So it is to some degree still in the stream that someone who is a secularist and is grabbing onto that stream, it's gonna speak through them in the way they talk, in the way they write, in the way they go about creating these movies, even if
Mhm.
they don't understand it. I mean, it's kind of got that, like, garbled, paganism, like that, the I guess the the honorable pagans of Dante, like the people that, they aren't Christian, they aren't going about their values in the right way, but they still kind of align to some sort of ideal of nobility that we as Christians can look back and say, oh, that's us. But even though they don't know it, they don't know Christ, they don't know what they're doing, but it's still working through them in a strange sort of way.
Mhm.
Oh, good. We can blame Dante. That's a, I had. You're right, of course,
John
because
Hughes is amongst the noble pagans. So what can I say?
that Dante does do that because there's the problem of and Chesterton doesn't fall into this, but C.S. Lewis definitely does. I love all of these ancient stories, and I can't imagine that they would be. This is the opposite problem for the Puritans who don't want Christian Christmas because they feel it's too pagan, and Lewis wants everything to be Christian because he can't. He wants the pagan stories to be actually, having access to that same truth that he sees in the gospel story because he doesn't want to give up the pagan. It's like the
Mhm.
opposite problem, and so Christianizes things that, you know. Can you Christianize the pagan classics? Virgil, right? Dante does that. It's like I want my poetry to be as great as his Latin poetry, and he would have been Christian, if only, and did write that Georgic where he prophesies the birth of the golden child, and therefore, oh yes, it must be actually Christian.
I mean, it's the old Saint Jerome question: is like, am I admiring Cicero more than Christ?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how much can I even engage with Cicero before I stop liking Christ and I go to hell? It's like that. Like, what degree can you expose yourself to this thing? And I think that that Lewisian instinct is natural in that sense, because you do see the noble pagans and you think, well, I don't want to throw Homer in the fire. Like, why would I want to do that? There's nobility here that I as a Christian recognize. Again, it's the Chesterton style too. It's like I recognize the goodness in this that the pagans can't, because because if you're a pagan reading this is even worse. Like, it's even darker, it's even sadder. But as a Christian, you can read it and you say, oh, there's the nobility, there's the goodness, there's the holiness.
So this gives us. So we have Jim Carrey's Grinch. I think this
That is monstrous. He looks like Krampus. Ugh.
You had Krampus in the stack next, right? So here
That's
we go.
why.
I know, and the thing is, I think now we're in the scary place, because we're in the scary place that our Stranger Things debate has taken us to, of so we started with the happy, hopeful thought that Die Hard is actually pointing to John, which we had some discussion in the chat about. Oh, the John Abrisi. John, his name is John. Looking up. Hans is he's saying he found it in AI. Thinks AI. The robots sometimes serve us, or do they? Hans is a popular masculine name, especially in Germanic Scandinavian countries, meaning God is gracious. Well, it's from Johannes. It's Hans. Hans. Originating a short form of Johannes from Hebrew. Right. It's basically John. So Hans and John. That if we can say, well, Die Hard's Christian, and it's pointing to Christ because it's coded. I don't like that everything's saying stuff is coded this, that, or the other. But if Die Hard's coded Christian by holly and the sacrifice and things like that, can we then are we or are we not doing the same thing with the monster stories that we want to enjoy, like, I don't know, Stranger Things that we're going to be watching on Christmas? Possibly. I mean, it's
I am not watching that on Christmas. But
see,
go on.
this is a problem.
I just can't.
But they're making it a Christmas show by airing it on Christmas. Like, literally the most Christmas, like, we're going to stream the thing for the first time ever on Christmas. Is this going to be a showing of the horror of what it is like without Christ if you're relying solely on your own magical powers, or is it going to simply corrupt everybody and drag them down into hell? And I mean, the Geeks Under Grace didn't like our book on the animals.
I'm not going to say anything bad about my editor, but that was not me. So
we know it wasn't you, but these are perilous waters, right? We rewrote what we thought was a completely Christian story with a clear image of Christ in the griffin and clear images of prayer practices and liturgy and stuff, and we were told no, we'd written a pagan story. So
okay, so this we're gonna have to revisit this next year and see is Stranger Things a Christmas story because they put it on Christmas Day. But there is something to be said about people, and these are the bad men, right? Rejecting creation as it exists and trying to somehow manipulate and invert it and control it. Sounds like AI, but anyway, go on.
Well, we're meditating on Krampus right now, right? And the Krampus story is apparently like I hated the Krampus movie. That was terrifying and ugly.
I didn't watch it.
It was so depressing.
Yeah,
I don't like that movie. Well, I mean, I like parts of it as a monster movie. It's like, okay, it's bad, but there's no catharsis to it. Everything is bad by the end of it. Like there's nothing good.
Nothing redeemable.
I mean, then again, it's also a German bedtime story, so it is appropriate. But
and Hans is a German name.
And ghost stories are for Christmas, right?
Yes.
Traditionally?
Yes.
Please forgive my short tangent here, but the transliteration nerd in me had to figure this out when we were discussing the John Hans question. But I did check, and the Gospel of John in German is in fact das Evangelium nach Johannes. So Johannes, so Hans, therefore you are correct.
Yeah, no, it's I have a German friend named Johannes. It's a popular German name. So it's short. It's like Hans is like Dick for Richard, right? It's a short version of the name.
I have to fight enough transliteration nerds that get really mad when the whole Jesus Yeshua thing, where I'm like, it's a legitimate transliteration of Yeshua. So don't get bent out of shape by it. Like there's a science to this. But anyway, where do we want to go with the Krampus thing?
We're on horror. We're on we've taken this way deeper than we were planning. This is a good thing. That we're in the depths of the argument over, okay, so can pagans be Christian even when they don't realize Christ? Is the sense of Christmas still there even with people who are like Jewish authors of Christmas carols, which is a big debate on the internet right now? It is this sort of feeling of Christmas available to all peoples, because as you've said, right, everybody celebrates Christmas. It's like, do we celebrate Diwali? Right? I light candles. I don't know, sing Sanskrit chants that I know from my time in yoga centers. Exactly what does it mean to say people can celebrate Christmas without it being about Christ? And this is constantly begging the question of the reality of the incarnation. It's like if we can have Hanukkah, which is explicitly, in a situation, as people are enjoying pointing out, in the Gospel of John, that the Feast of the Dedication is one of the moments when the Jews say they're going to turn on Jesus. So Hanukkah is not actually a Christmas festival. It's the opposite. It's the temple dedication that is not the temple that we recognize in Jesus, who is the temple, who has entered into the world and redeemed it. these are huge, like, big questions, and we all like to be nice and shove them under the rug or the Christmas tree, and claim that all of this can be available in the world without having to affirm Christ. And it seems to me the Krampus story is like, it's so bleak and black because there's no Christ in that story. There's nothing available in that horror that says, oh yes, this is all going to be okay.
I mean, it gives me, Krampus almost gives me like a Greek tragedy vibe to it, where just, you know, hubris just spirals wildly out of control, and no one at any point has the reflection to stop it. Because there's like one decision at the beginning of the movie that results in the entire thing turning into a nightmare, and then it just never gets off that track. Like, so, and that movie's kind of, it's fascinating because it didn't do all that well in the box office when it came out. So I don't think it's the kind of thing that most people want out of their Christmas movies. But it is conceptually interesting if you want to like use it as another edge case like you're discussing. And I think you're right. It's such a strange, without the kind of redemption or the ability to turn into something cathartic. Like, that movie should have ended with, like, you know, the kid has some sort of moment of catharsis, and suddenly, like, the actual Christmas comes back, and, like, you know, I've learned to trust Saint Nicholas, and the real Santa shows up and, you know, kicks Krampus into the hole or something. It's like, you know, something
that is better.
It's, well, yeah, at least, and, you know, everyone comes back to life because the spirit of Christmas has been found or something. Like, I mean, it might be a little kitschy and lame in the way I'm describing it, but there's no, as it is,
Well,
it's characters falling into hell because they made one mistake and never,
right.
you know, found absolution for it, which
That's not a Christian movie. There's no the Christian themes. It would be as if you saw the very end of okay, so the musical, the Albert Finney version of A Christmas Carol, where he actually goes into hell and is chained to a desk, and where before he wakes up, it would be like if they ended it there and didn't show him waking up saying, you know, thanking God he hasn't missed Christmas and he's going to change his ways. That just sounds really sadly dark. Yeah, that doesn't sound redeeming at all. I'm glad I didn't watch it.
There needs to be more catharsis to it in order for it to really feel meaningful. But granted, I kind of get what the movie's going for, but even then, it's still uncomfortable to watch.
Well, it sounds like it's the most, you know, like the most significant of the movies that we're talking about, because it shows you what happens if you don't have Christ. If there is, in fact, no redemption, if there is no release from our sins, if there is no way out, it's just karma and retribution and
literally descending into hell.
Literally descending into hell, no mercy, no coming of the Christ child, nothing. This is it. This is reality. Well, reality without Christ is Krampus.
Right. That's what's horrible about it, is because he's wearing a St. Nicholas suit, and by ending it the way they did, from what you're both telling me, they're saying, "Oh, Christianity's a lie. Everything ends in hell." I hate that.
The moment in that movie that sets it all off is the fact that the kid tears up his letter to Santa and loses hope, and that's what causes the spiral.
That's so dark.
Yeah, so it's
Dantean.
It's ridiculously dark. Like, for like what happens, like, it feels like there should be a moment where decisions could negate that, but it never really happens. It just keeps getting. You just keep descending the stairwell, but there's no coming out the other end of it.
But I could say this is a truthful movie in the sense that everybody's always saying, "Oh, we could have Christmas without Christ." And it's like, you could? Really?
It's called Krampus.
It's called Krampus. If Christmas without Christ is Krampus. That's it. And I, you know, again, I'm not sure we can attribute that level of purposefulness to the makers of the movie. It's like, why do they end it with this, like, just despair? Like, why make a movie where it ends in despair? It's like, this is
I hate Christmas.
It's one of those, you know, it's like Jonathan Edwards, you know, the sinners in the hands of the angry God. It's, well, except for we're not in the hands of an angry God. We're in the hands of a God that loved us so much he came into the world as a baby. So the Krampus is showing, it's like, this is what it will be if you don't have Christ. There is no out. It's like, that's it. That's what that's why they converted, because
Mm,
they saw the darkness that they were in otherwise, and the Christians were bringing them this message of hope and redemption. They weren't going to be slaves to sin and Satan anymore. They could be redeemed through Christ. Like, and these are like
mhm.
technical terms: redemption from slavery. Christ pays for us so that we're not slaves anymore.
Right. And
But
we
I think that
demand to
makes
see that in our Christmas movies.
I think
What?
that makes the vestigial hope in secular Christmas movies more Christian then,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean the fact that you have all these movies that aren't overtly Christian, but they still have that vestigial hope. I
Hmm.
I I don't think that you can have a good Christmas movie with that. Well, that's still has its hands on the third rail and has this coming through it without that. But it's a contradiction because you have the Krampus problem of like, oh, there's no hope or catharsis in this because you're a sinner and you're going to be falling into hell
Right.
because you did one thing bad, and there's no way you can atone for it.
The Grinch.
But then you have the Grinch, you have Elf, you have Christmas Vacation, and these movies aren't religious at all, or at least they're not if they're religious, they're usually as a joke, like the purse scene in Christmas Vacation where the wife's praying that he's not gonna crash the car. It's like you know it's vestigial, but that it's still working through it. And maybe this is evidence that the active decay of our civilization hasn't been totally effective yet, that we're still kind of living in the remnants of what was the Christian civilization, but it's still there to some degree.
Well,
Or
you
people
should
want
have
it to be
had Sir
there.
Gawain and the
It's
Green
hopeful.
Knight on this list, because that's actually the one great Christmas story where we have
It's not a movie. Well, I was gonna say
there's
it's not a
many
movie, but
movie
there is a
versions.
movie
There's a
version of
Sean
it, and
Connery
it's
Well,
version of it, and
since
it's actually a test of Christianity. It happens at the Christmas
mhm.
feast, and he has a whole year that is resolved. That
Right, he
Gawain.
goes through the whole liturgical year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Lent is a big factor of that story too.
Right, and
we want to talk about the Krampus problem. Talk about the recent Green Knight movie where there is no Christ in that
Oh, I
movie
heard
and
about that.
there is no purpose to what he's doing. He just gets to the Green Knight and says, "You're about to die and you're going to rot." There's no purpose to what
see.
you're doing other than your own.
BBC is not what it used to
Yeah,
be.
Now we have the Grinch is good. I've got the next
yeah.
image of the Grinch, right? The Grinch is green because he really is Green Knight's kind of character. I don't know, but
Oh,
but
that's an interesting
I don't know
thought.
about that. I think this, if you end up in the Christless resolution, indeed that is the best demonstration of the horror of claiming that Christ isn't necessary. Because guess what? This is what you get if there is no mercy.
Hmm.
So we get to the miracle on 34th Street.
And I will say, I think for the most part, like the things I'm polemicizing against in the book are not the same thing that you're polemicizing to in the moment in terms of who we're disagreeing with. Because I think for the most part, there are people that obviously want to secularize Christmas more and to take more Christ out of Christmas more, and
Why?
we would
Why
want
did
we
they
would
want
mind
to
if
take Christ out of Christmas? I'm puzzled.
I
there's
met no, I have met people like this. They want to do it because they want all the fun with none of the responsibility because they know if they keep Christ in Christmas, it
they,
means I have
they
to
read
go to
they
church.
read Sam Harris in 2004 and it was profound for them. So they have this is why. But
Help me see into this weird and strange place
well,
of
if you don't believe in if you don't believe in God, it follows like. But you might like, oh well, I still want to like have the Christmas stuff because you like it, and we don't.
Mhm.
It's the Richard Dawkins liking cathedrals without believing in God dichotomy of like, well, I like that I live in a civilization that creates cathedrals, but I don't want to believe in the thing that actually creates
mm.
cathedrals. So it's almost the same with Christmas movies, but much lower stakes, much more trivial. Thankfully, at least in this circumstance.
Well, so I mean, this is what we were saying about the Krampus problem. They're assuming that they can have these beautiful things without Christ in it. Although it sounds to me like Dawkins, he says he likes living in a context in which everybody else believes and he doesn't have to. He gets
Because it's responsibility. It's personal responsibility people don't want to have, in my opinion. Having spoken to people like him.
so they want the feast and the get together and the
Yeah, they want the feast. They don't want the fast. And they want the nostalgia, and
we haven't
I'm
talked
a big
about the
fan of
nostalgia.
nostalgia.
Talk about the nostalgia. Tyler, you had a lot in your meditation on how nostalgia feeds into people's identification of which movies count for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked a little bit about how, and I think it was the third or fourth chapter, how a movie gets canonized as a Christmas movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the only conclusion I could come up with was that it's a process that requires time, because classics by their nature can't be decided in the moment. I mean, every once in a while, like a new movie comes out, and some film bro declares this is a modern classic, and then 5 years from now, no one remembers it.
Yeah,
So
an instant classic.
it's
Yeah.
it happens all the time. But you think about a movie, Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life. The continuity and the universality is what gives it that ability, that staying power. And Christmas classics are a little weird because I don't think Elf has the same staying power as It's a Wonderful Life, but it still is enduring. So it obviously it's hitting it's hitting the notes that the genre needs to in order to be a classic within its genre. So, but nostalgia obviously plays a big role in that, just because we look back on the movies you grew up with and they become relational to you, and they become a part of how you exercise the holiday liturgically, and how you bring yourself into the season, create the emotions of Christmas, create the feeling of Christmas. And it's part of what gives the movies their power to some degree, and why they're hard to watch the rest of the year, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Again, no one wants to watch Elf in August. It's you watch these movies because they're accomplishing something for you at this one time of the year where it's appropriate to do it, because it's Christmas and you watch a Christmas movie at Christmas.
There's a big ritual aspect to it, for sure.
The ritual aspect, and that is something I found a lot in the research I was doing and the people I was kind of building my arguments off of in the book. So the ritual of Christmas is such a huge aspect of why it is the way it is, because it's part of the grounding of the holiday and what we use to, basically just create a kind of a liturgical calendar for us to base, or even for people that aren't religious, it's part of their liturgical calendar that kind of grounds the year and gives them a sense of what's
Right.
what they're doing at that moment. And especially, if you're in the middle of the holiday, at the middle of December, and it's cold, and you want to be near your family and you want that warmth, it's a huge part of the appeal, even just the secular appeal.
Yeah, and you can see that easily because it's really everyone's desire for home and hearth.
Yeah.
And Christmas definitely stokes those memories.
Yeah. I mean, this is fresh on my mind because I've been reading Dickens this week, and he talks a lot about the contrast of the cold of the cold outer world with the inner warmth of the hearth, of families coming into their houses and hiding behind the warm shades, and being surrounded by love, and the cold doesn't affect them because it's pouring out of them, and they have this it's almost as if the love is like heating them and making them giving them cheer, even though everything else is frigid. Scrooge is frigid. He's keeping his office with like heated with one coal. He doesn't want that warmth because it costs money. And so there is that element to it where a lot of the Christmas is just almost that, we're going to find light in the darkness, warmth in the cold, that we're even if they're just manifesting it without the religious ideal behind it, it is they recognize the desire that it's supposed to be there, and they assent to it.
Yes, that's a big thing. It's supposed to be there. You can easily you can easily identify with Bob Cratchit, cold, alone at night in December, still working away at a desk job he hates, and then he gets to go home and it's warm and it's crowded and there's lots of people there and everybody knows you, and it's a completely different relationship, and everybody wants that. And that was just a really good way that the author did that he showed the I guess the physical space of being at home in front of a hearth with all the people as you just
Yeah.
described. It's such a huge contrast to what people had to go through every day just to earn the living so that they had the ability to do that. It just showed
I mean, it still
appreciation.
is. I mean, we're on our own industrial revolution right now, and we're
Yeah.
on our own stressors with
Hmm.
the economy.
Which is
Yeah,
why it still resonates with people.
I mean, I think things like this kind of do become more potent when, especially nowadays, when everyone moves so far from their families, and when
Hmm.
jobs drag you halfway across the country, and you hear all these stories of people who don't get to go home for Christmas, or they get stuck at the airport for a reason, and it just becomes the worst year of the worst month of their life because of that. It's like they're deprived of that warmth in the hearth. That's why there's so
Yeah.
many, so many churches do, are you alone on Christmas? Please come to this guy's house and hang out with us. Like,
Mm.
please do not be alone. Like
Yeah.
it's a charitable service now to offer someone a place to go on Christmas.
Hmm.
So this is what I think about the nostalgia sorry, that intersects with the Victorian elements of our I mean, the Victorians are nostalgic for a period that
Yeah.
never existed as well. Nostalgia is always a projection onto a past that you wished you had participated in, but it itself didn't exist. So there's a sort of multiple layers of we have nostalgia for the Victorian style Christmas, which was in self invented out of their nostalgia for the world that they imagined. I mean, they were, as you're saying, it's like excuse me, Cratchit is working in an office. Dickens is describing their, disruption of their cities, their industry, the loss of all of the traditions of the countryside, which, as we've said,
Hmm.
nobody ever knows what the traditions of the countryside were, or of the medieval, because everything's been overlaid by this Victorian, des- deep desire to have that lost Christmas, which we don't even know what was. I mean, it's very frustrating reading the medieval sources, because when you get like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and you get the liturgical books that give you the masses and all of the the songs and such that were associated with it, but mainly what people had at Christmas was the feasting, which we have no access to in our storytelling. So it's like
I think you see. I mean, I will counterpoint that. I think you see a little bit of that in Washington Irving's Old Christmas, where
mm,
you do see again a vestigial version of that floating around 1820s England, where you do have more of the feasting and worshiping style of
right.
Christmas still kind of hanging out. And even then, it's like, this is not mainstream Christmas. This is, he's gone off into some shire in the middle of nowhere. And actually, I don't know enough about England geographically to be saying that, but like he's not in mainstream culture when Irving is writing this. He's going out and he finds a family that's celebrating Christmas, and they do have this traditional, hog head roasting,
Mm.
mulled wine. Everyone goes to the mansion's chapel for hymns, sort of version of Christmas. So I think you can still find bits and pieces of it, but yeah, I guess that would, I mean, I don't know how you would try to retrieve a medieval Christmas at this point, but I
Well,
do
Well,
see
who
what
has
you're
2 weeks off?
it's the layering of nostalgia on the nostalgia that I'm interested in. It's that most people now, when they're imagining, oh, we wish we had, like in the movie, which they got this big tree. The Christmas trees, the classic Christmas trees, are, of course, this development of the 19th century, when Victoria brings over the German with Albert's tree. So that in the English tradition, having these decorated trees is itself already an invented tradition. You're going there with, you mentioned
Mhm.
John Henry Newman. It's yes, I'm actually fine with the development of tradition. I don't mind that. Um, it's interesting when it's interesting how many layers of anxiety the invention of tradition generates for people, though. Um, and now I'm not sure where I'm going with that. It's like people,
Well, part of it's
families invent traditions all the time, and then it becomes, and it's like undergraduates on campus are constantly inventing traditions. Yes, this is the way we've always done it. I'm like, we didn't do that 3 years ago. You just got here 2 years ago, and therefore you think that this is the way it's always been done. But that's just because it happened
Tradition
the
is a
last 2
magic
years.
word.
Tradition is a magic word, right? So that longing for the thing that is the way we used to do it is usually overlaying a lot of inventions. So that
part of that probably just speaks to the way, culture and technology has just accelerated
right.
the world in the past 200 years. I mean, you read the chapters I write on in chapter 2, and I talk a little bit about life prior to 1800, but then you hit 1800 and everything, it goes from centuries long traditions to every decade some new development happens, and it turns to every year something new happens, and culture
Mhm.
just keeps getting faster as these new uh, developments build on each other, and to borrow a Reformation term, they become accretions to some degree. And it does create this problem of like, well, what's the valid thing here? What are we supposed to do?
Mm.
Like, and I guess, I mean, obviously, if nostalgia is driving it to some degree, that's going to create problems, because you go back one generation and it's like, oh well, this didn't exist a generation ago. It's like, well, what do you mean? It's here right now. It's like, well, it wasn't. Well, we didn't. That's not how we did it 20 years ago. But it's it's there now. It's like, I mean,
Well,
most of the
Santa Claus
movies.
being one of the best ones of these, right? And you did a nice job of telling the story of the invention of Santa Claus.
Yes.
I like my quote where I said, if you create a machine that you put a Turkish bishop in one end and you come out with the Coca-Cola sign, you'd have to assume the machine is broken. But
Yes, it's like you said why
Yeah.
is Santa Claus? How'd you put why is Santa Claus so strange? How did you put
yeah,
it? Yeah, so
yeah,
weird, so weird. So why is Santa Claus so weird? Because yes,
which I think which I, as I was looking, that originally started with me wanting to just look at like the weird logistics of Santa Claus movies. I talk
yeah,
about that a little bit in the chapter, but it just kind of became this bigger thing. Is like, everything about this guy is weird. Everything about the way it's conceptualized and developed, it's strange. And there's the great quote from the evangelical historian I found in there, who said, the weird thing is, the more we secularize Santa, the more supernatural he gets, and the more
yeah.
omnipotent he gets. Is like,
Uh,
he starts out as a Catholic saint, and but now the secular version of it, he's omnipotent. He knows if you're bad. Like, how does he know? Like, where does he get this? How does
the
he get
elf
the
on the
ability to be
shelf.
everywhere? He's not like bilocating or something. He's everywhere in one night.
He's omnipresent. Yeah.
He sees you when you're sleeping. It's like he's more supernatural the more secular he gets.
I saw Red One on the plane coming back from Bahrain, which was its own excitement in November, because when I was leaving Bahrain, they were putting up all the Christmas decorations. Not the thing you expect in Bahrain, right? Because they are definitely a Muslim country, but they had more Christmas decorations up than I'd seen at home yet. And watching Red One on the plane coming back, I mean the more tech, the tech in that one was delightful, right? It's like in fact, how can he do all of this so that yes, what you're saying there. I forgot what my point was. I'm sorry.
It's
Go
okay.
reset. Go back to what you were saying about the strangeness, how the more secularized he becomes, the more supernatural he becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Red One was definitely playing off all of that, right? Everything becomes this supernatural tech problem.
Well, my favorite example in the book was the Santa Claus movies with Tim Allen,
Mm.
because you watch those movies and it starts out as a very simple, sad, kind of melancholy movie about a dad dealing with divorce and
Mm-hmm.
single parenthood, and then but as they go along, the movies become about the logistics of being Santa Claus, and they just become more complicated, and the rules they set up contradict previous rules, so the sequels start having to address, wait a minute, those two rules clash. If Santa Claus has to have a wife and you killed the previous Santa Claus, where's the previous Mrs. Claus? And like, so Mrs. Claus spends a whole part of the most of a season in the most recent Santa Claus thing being like, where the heck is Mrs. Claus? Did they freaking kill her? What the heck?
Mm.
It's like where did the elves do with her? And no one's talking. And eventually they reveal it, but they become so caught up in these Byzantine rules, it just becomes more complicated, and you have to dig more and more to create more dramatic stories out of the simple. What started out as a really simple story, and it just gets worse over time as they have to keep digging deeper to make excuses for why the omnipotent elf can't do the thing he's supposed to be perfect at doing. Like every movie is about like, well, why can't Santa do this? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
because he's sick. Oh, because someone stole his jacket. Oh, because he's dead. It's like
Red
it's
one because
always a
he's
problem.
kidnapped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like the way you said it, that the problem with Santa movies is that he needs belief. So it's this interesting test of, can you, even though everyone's recognizing that the parents are doing this, thinking about the nostalgia. It's like we love creating nostalgia for our kids by giving them Santa presents. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
My mom in her basement did great from the North Pole letters, right up there with Tolkien. Letters from the North
That's
Pole.
cute.
She wrote them out in like block letters, so it was like, and it took us years to figure out that it was her handwriting.
That's very
You
cute.
want this, right? You want, and so the sort of logistics of it, the logistics of faith, that I've been thinking about this with Stranger Things too, that there is this moment as you're growing up where unfortunately you start realizing all the stuff that the adults hadn't been telling you. And you can't ever get that back. You can't go back and not have gone through being 12, 13, 14, 15 and then wake up and one day all the magic's gone, because it's
Mm.
just the horrible adult stress complicated relationship world drat. Right? What happened to the world that what you didn't understand half of what was going on anyway, and wonderful things happened for you, hopefully, right? Please hope that most children get the better version of this, because not everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like I was saying, it feeds into itself. So you
Yes.
have the Clark Griswold thing where it's like, oh, well, I have this memory of what Christmas was, and I'm watching the home videos, and I remember the feeling that I had when I was the recipient of it. Now I
Mm-hmm.
want to be the machine that creates that thing, but also I'm Clark Griswold, and I fail at everything I do because I'm not my parents. And all the effort just turns into eating turkey jerky or burning down the tree, and
Well, that's what
obviously that's it.
that
I
was what
mean,
was so
obviously
lovely
the
about that movie, though, because when he asked his dad, "How did you get through it?" He said, "I had a lot of help from Jack Daniels."
yeah
So then he just kind of fesses up like, "It was never like you thought it was. It was always hard."
yeah. So it's almost the leaf by niggle thing where it's like all your effort
Mm.
doesn't produce the art you think it's going to produce, and then you get to there and you realize, oh, the thing I wanted to create has been created, even though the sum of my effort is not what ends up on the page. It's the thing got produced through things beyond me. So
That's really beautiful.
Hmm.
Like this
I
is
just turned I just correlated Clark Griswold with Leaf by Niggle. I'm sorry.
that's great. No,
It's
and,
awesome.
and and what you were saying about the parents become the engine of that memory that they have of what it was like getting those presents.
Yeah.
And so, this is the positive. I'm going to cry now. I mean, the positive meta level of what makes Christmas is that, um I mean, it's the handing on of the generations, which really matters, that you are participating in the the wonder with. I mean, this sounds. You were, when you were saying it, it came out better in my head.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. There's been some in my own family. There's been some interesting debates right now because we have I have three new nephews or second cousins. One's removed in the family now,
Mm.
and now there's three babies running around the family farm every single year, and
Oh,
it's
lovely.
changing the dynamic of how we celebrate, because now we went from three generations, all of whom are adults, to everyone's reorienting, and now all the people of my age are now having to work on Christmas Eve, and we have to contribute because and we're constantly asking is like, okay, well, do we start redirecting presents from the younger, from the kids to the grandkids now? And that's kind of created some questions of like, okay, logistically, how do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
How do we give the three younger ones the best Christmas? And a lot of it comes down to, well, the older people kind of got to sacrifice a little bit more. It means we're not not buying everyone in the family isn't buying each other $100 presents but we have to create that charade for the next generation, and then when they're adults they have to create that for them, and it just creates this cycle where it's like, at some point you go from running around in everyone's feet on Christmas to the person that has to take the ham out of the oven, and you're kind of putting on the play for the little ones in a way.
Yeah,
That's the fun part, though.
but isn't that wonderful?
It is.
It's really fun.
Well, it isn't in the fact that now I have to slave in the kitchen, but like, that's
Yeah, that's not. You love baking. I'm buying that for a second. I have been the recipient of Tyler's Christmas cookies. Don't believe it for a second that it's slaving away for him. He's in.
I will also, I say that my baking is one, and my writing are the two things in life I take no politeness in. I'm one of the few people in the country that still does figgy pudding, so I know what the heck I'm doing.
Oh, wow. That is impressive, actually.
Yeah, there's a cooking video of me doing it on YouTube if you really want to find it. But
cool.
Well, this
again, again, the only area in my life where I have no humility at all. So
we've come round to that. You had in the book that you and your girlfriend had a debate over which was the Christmas movie, and your family's movie was Christmas Story, which I recognize the accident of Christmas Story being the one that everybody knew because they started showing it 24 hours on TMC or whatever.
Yeah.
On Thanksgiving Day, I remember that.
My
own family has a memory of Christmas Story being the Christmas movie when one Christmas the cat had to go to the vet and we were trapped in the vet on Christmas seeing the Christmas Story on loop, right? Because that's what they were playing on the screens in the vet. But
some traumatic memory, great.
I have nothing but traumatic pet memories from Christmas. It is clearly there. The cat when she survived after that for quite a long time, so that was a happy story. But your girlfriend had Jingle All the Way as her family movie, and that you had this is showing now. You had difficulty accepting this one when what he's trying to do is get the gift that he was supposed to get for his son, and I haven't seen Jingle All the Way, so it's like you end up somehow in the parade having to do Christmassy things tell us more about Jingle All the Way.
Well, it was the point I was trying to get to with that example was that there's kind of an internality to the relationships we have with Christmas movies, because my one was always Christmas Story, and that was the one I watched every year, and the DVD from my childhood is somewhere crippled and barely functioning at this point because it's been because of all the laser burn on it. And when the epiphany I had was when I encountered the woman I was dating at the time, like what her family's tradition, and realizing like there's none of that mimetic memory to what I'm encountering. Right. Because I went into Jingle All the Way with no nostalgia, no knowledge of what it was, and I'm watching it and I'm like, it's the classic your best friend wants to show you his favorite movie and you're like, okay, that was good.
Don't do this at home.
Yes. And so I from that I kind of deduced a lot about the internality of our relationship to Christmas movies, in the sense that it is an act as much as it is something that we have a relation, something that we watch.
Right.
It's not the movie gains meaning by the nature of the act of watching it every year, and it becomes something that builds over time like a muscle. And when you don't have that muscle, it just feels weird. And it just, to me, it spoke to just to that liturgical nature of the watching that we discussed a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, this. I'll read a bit from you so that that you guys, you got to read his book because it's actually lovely in these meditations that come across quite gently. We've pushed him really hard on the Krampus one, but that you're talking about watching Jingle All the Way and realizing that Christmas movies only really make sense in a liturgical sense. They are an act that takes on divine meaning through repetition and loyalty. They reflect the things we do to ground ourselves in a solid foundation through yearly acts of contrition. We cuddle up with hot chocolate and quote our favorite scenes because it's just the thing our family does ritualistically. We set up the same Christmas tree. We bake the same Christmas cookies, or figgy pudding in your case. We mail Christmas cards to the same 50 people. We fly halfway across the country to meet with the same annoying people who annoyed us last year. Christmas is structured and regimented by expectations, days of obligation, and forced ritual merriment, but that regularity is part of what makes it familiar. And I like what you said just now of saying, if you watch somebody else's ritual, it's hard to feel it because it hasn't been that thing that you've been practicing over the years. It is how interesting. It's like if you've done it once, then it becomes it can become a new ritual, and say like, shall we do it again because we remember it from last year?
Yeah, you left out my favorite line in that, which is that at times you almost need to take catechesis classes in order to understand your girlfriend's favorite Christmas movie.
Yes, like the unbeliever who walks into a Catholic mass for the first time, you may be scandalized by the idea that the God who created the universe has been consecrated into a wafer. One almost needs to join RCIA classes to get properly included in your girlfriend's favorite family Christmas movie and why her dad laughs hysterically at the same scenes every year. But after a few years, anyone would begin to pick up on the internal jokes and quote the same lines. It nuances blossoms with each viewing. And that is, I mean, liturgically, that's the point of, today, here it is. We're repeating it again, and it builds over your life. That each year, even though it's the 60th time that you've gone through this, is new and special because of the repetition.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I wrote it, so yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you read it well too. I like that. So, but you did say that Elf has a special place, and we need to talk about Elf. That somehow Elf you pointed out is it the last Christmas classic? That was a while ago. It's like over 20 years ago now. And it's like we really haven't had any other movie that's come out.
Well, the interesting thing, Elf is another one of those movies that's become really popular in my family, especially for my sister and my mom. So that ends up being one that's built a lot of mimetic reference in our family. But the thing I was getting at is the fact that there really hasn't been a canonized Christmas classic in that time, because there has been good Christmas movies in the past 20 years. I threw out The Holdovers and Best Christmas Pageant Ever and a couple others, Klaus on Netflix. These are great movies that in a previous time would have become on par with or better recognized than a movie like Elf, but they just haven't. They're all cult hits. And the conclusion I came to was ultimately that I think it's part of the splintering of our society through the internet, that it's becoming harder not only to make good art, but for good art to find its audience, because everyone is so, we're all tracked onto different little branches, and there's not any sort of cohesion, and so everyone just kind of does their own thing. So that's changed a lot since Elf came out in 2004, and even just in the short time since then. Like it's the possibility of creating a classic is just, in the grander sense, is harder. Like you think of the last 20 years, like what would you consider a classic in general out of that time? And there's good movies, obviously, but it's like, okay, is there anything that I would put on par with the classics of early 2000s, the 90s, the before then? It's just it's harder. I will say that the Elf debate is not my question. That's actually, there's a lot of people that have been asking that in the past few years. If you look up, is Elf a Christmas movie? There's a lot of articles about this.
Well, I think yes, definitely, it's a Christmas movie.
I should say, is it the last great classic Christmas movie?
Is it the last? Yeah, I never thought about it, but yeah, I can't think of another one since that's been like that. But then again, as you just pointed out, I can't think of another movie or series of movies that that gained like classic status the way they did like in the early 2000s, before 2010, let's say, or the late 90s.
Like they're there, but they're more sparse and they're never quite as ubiquitous, which I think is evidence of the kind of cultural fracturing we're in, thanks in part to the internet.
Or just the media fracturing, right? Because you used to have
Yeah,
studios controlling everything and controlling distribution, and then suddenly had all of these streaming only type things like Amazon or Apple, and they all started creating their own movies. And I remember when I first read about this, I thought this is wonderful. There's going to be more creativity, but unfortunately, there's just been a lot of really bad stuff produced as well. So it's like the pool gets larger, but
yeah,
it gets
it's
larger for
wider and
everything.
shallower,
So
unfortunately. Go back to the
hmm,
era of 3 television channels and everything's potent. Everyone's watching the same things. Everyone quotes the
hmm,
same. Everyone's like, "Hey, you caught you caught Dick Van Dyke last night." It's like, yeah, everyone just
right.
kind of knew, even if they were watching the other channel. It's just like, oh yeah, there was the thing that happened on the other channel. It's like everyone knows because there's only a few things you can watch. So it just
Hmm.
affects the way you have this relationship with and bond through art with other people.
Well, then
True.
the potency becomes the fact that everybody saw it, not necessarily that it was great.
Yeah, and there is an artificiality to it as well. I mean, even lots of people have pointed out that It's a Wonderful Life did not gain its cultural omnipotence until it hit the public domain in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
because that's
Right.
when they started doing the we're gonna make this into a classic and run it constantly sort of thing. I mean,
And it was an
it had,
accident.
yeah. So there is like a level of like, okay, is this just corporations astroturfing everything? But then you see corporations actually astroturf stuff, and it sucks. So it's kind of both.
Yeah.
I
Well,
read up
True.
I remember a couple years ago I was looking through the store and it was like, "What's this? The Elf on a Shelf movie?" I'm gonna,
They made a movie out of that.
it's like a bad animated movie
yeah.
based on Elf on a Shelf from like 10 years ago, and I never
Oh
watched it.
no.
And yeah, I think it's called an elf story, but it's one of those things like, astroturfing doesn't always work. It only
Yeah.
sometimes
Right.
works. There
So
actually
that
has to be
leaves
some
us with the
custom.
mystery of what makes what makes these classic Christmas movies.
Well,
It's you
it's
know it
the
when you see it, but then this is why I think your Aristotelian method was appropriate, that you went through different characteristics of Christmas movies and came out with where I was at the beginning. It's like, I'm not sure which one I think is my Christmas movie. I don't I don't I don't seem to have one based on this list. I You're right, right. I'm like, oh dear, where's mine?
I'm not gonna lie, my own sense of humor is making me laugh right now. Uh,
Because
it's tempting quoting from chapter 1. It's tempting to defer to the infamous standard set up by Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart's threshold for obscene materials. To paraphrase, I shall not today attempt to define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced within the shorthand description of Christmas movies, and perhaps I could never succeed in intelligently doing so, but I know it when I see it. And I say that's a terrible definition.
Yeah.
well, for example, so everyone loves, the Linus giving the speech at the end of Charlie Brown's Christmas movie. Um,
Yeah.
here's my hair. I never liked Peanuts. It,
Oh, how
I
could you?
I
They're
know.
adorable.
Although at my mother's house, one of the things that I've reread a lot is actually a lot of the original Peanuts, when the dog still looks like a dog and not, what Snoopy becomes. I don't know. I mean, it's like Peanuts is there as the trope of the culture. It's one of the least I loved, Calvin and Hobbes, and I loved Bloom County and such, but Peanuts always seemed to me to be um a bit thin.
I liked them because they were so innocent, and
Mm.
and I can remember being really young and still thinking very simplistically about life and how comforting that was. You know. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
I mean, Calvin is supposed to be the same age as the Peanuts characters. They're about first grade, so they're like 6, and he has way better adventures than I thought. Even Snoopy ever did. Snoopy just sat on his house and flew around. Calvin got to fight, dinosaurs. And
Snoopy got to fight the Red Baron. What are you talking about?
well, okay. So, the canonicity of these things clearly is, testable, because even the one that I'm supposed to love because he actually tells the Christmas story isn't, I feel it, right? I get the nostalgia and the kitsch and the sweetness of picking the terrible tree. But what happened? What kind of Scrooge am I that I don't like?
You're encountering the jingle all the way problem. You're looking at someone else's tradition and it's not, and you're just bouncing off of it. It's understandable. But like I mean,
I grew up with
weird.
Peanuts just as much as Casey did, and it clearly didn't stick.
To your point about it being thin, there's a very wonderful brick-length biography of Charles Schulz, where at one point someone came up to him who was interviewing him and said, there's a philosopher that read Peanuts and said it's a great work of existentialism. And Schulz, being this very normal layperson, said, "What's that mean?" He's just like, I just write these kind of melancholy little comics where my characters get pooped on. It's just kind of like I'm just bonking them on the head because it's funny. It's the great Coen Brothers line from from their movies where it's like sometimes we just we create a movie where we just torture our character because it's funny, just endlessly just creating scenarios that just create more and more problems for them just because it's cathartic for us. And
they had to be talking about Raising Arizona.
I think that was more towards like Inside Llewyn Davis and some of their later ones, but they were their later comedies, I think. But at least for them, I get why someone would look at Peanuts and think it's a little bit thin because it's a lot of it's instinctual. It's not really philosophical or really. It's just kind of like the same kind of little sad melancholy joke over and over again. But I like it. So, and I do think that I do really think that particularly the Charlie Brown Christmas special does kind of capture a little bit of that Platonic ideal to some degree.
Yeah, well, I think it's the messages in the cartoons they're very simple the same way they're drawn. They're like just very simple lines.
Well, and it does contain a little bit of that contradiction to it too, because as I point out in in the consumerism chapter, if you go back and watch the original broadcast version of it, they have animated Coca-Cola ads between all the segments that are not in it anymore. And it's why if you watch the modern versions of it, it just cuts to black in awkward places. I'm like, why do they cut out the song there? It's like, there was a Coca-Cola ad there they can't keep anymore. So it's like, it's this whole special about why consumerism is bad is also a commercial for Coca-Cola.
The red and white of the Coca-Cola Santa.
Right. Gave us Santa first again, Santa and then a polar bear, which I've never understood what that had to do with Christmas.
Again, it's like it's blowing off steam for the problem it's creating. So it's like it's a weird cycle.
As we've learned now, I think we've cycled back now through to Hans Gruber is falling off the Nakatomi Tower. I'm actually happier now with the problem of it's like Christmas. One of the things about Christmas is it makes us meditate constantly on this conflict. And, our conflict of being incarnate and, surrounded by stuff. And yes, John Abrisi, I'm in my mother's house. I said that at the beginning. You came late to class. So
she's themed for nostalgia.
I'm themed for nostalgia because I'm in my mom's house and at Christmas. And I'm back in the 70s as I do often at Christmas. That Christmas movies keep having to revisit this conflict because we do. It doesn't go away. I mean, the sort of generational conflicts that we're talking about with the Santa movies are important because they are about what happens when you are now the grown-up and need to be the person who makes the joy and the wonder and mystery and sort of magic for the kids, which you want to do. I mean, it's like it's the temptation to write letters from Santa is great, right? Of course, you want to have that, and that the conflict between pagan and Christian, it's not going to go away. We don't get to say, okay, look, we're all Christian, and you're going to stop doing that pagan. And the pagan temptation is constantly going to be there because that's what Christ is calling us away from. So, we're going to lose the conflict when we lose the need for Christ, and therefore we're not going to lose it. How's that?
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't. I looked at when I wrote the book. I did not view it as something where I could solve the problem because as I jokingly say, I have not yet attained the title of the Pope of Christmas movies
Yet.
yet. But you got to aim for the sky. But the thing is, like, I can't definitively answer some of these questions for other people because there is legitimate reasons to disagree over the baseline questions. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie or anything else I ask? And like, I'm not offering a definitive solution. And it's like as we're talking for 2 hours now, and we keep kind of going in not circles like in a bad way, but we're like keep revisiting the same themes in different contexts because it's just every time you make a circle, you wind up another lap, and it's a different nuance and it's feeding into it a different way. It's really complicated, and everyone's going to deal with it a little bit differently, and everyone has a different coping mechanism for dealing with it differently. So it's like we can't offer definitive solutions, but at the very least, like, we having the debates, living in the tension, like that's what you have to do every Christmas. It's like this reality of the world.
That's beautifully said.
Anyway, buy the book because it helps you talk.
Do you have a copy of it? You could.
I have my proof
Okay,
copy.
wave it
that's
at
full of
wave at the
errors,
camera.
So
yes, so
there's no spelling errors on the cover.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, everyone, you know what to do when your family decides to watch a Christmas movie. You fight over it.
Oh no! I'm spreading division and conflict.
No, it's that we're still in Advent, right? And you're in the liturgical moment of needing to wrestle with the mystery, and that seems to me to be a wonderful thing to have learned from our conversation about what makes the Christmas movies. Robert Montgomery showed up and is spamming the chat with things that I think is about my previous discussion today because he's talking about fencing. So that's I'm trying to love you. Okay, that God loves us, and that being the great message of Christmas, that God so loved the world that He sent His only Son, that whoever believe in Him shall have eternal life. And that's the truth.
Amen.
Amen. Well, everyone, we hope you have a very Merry Christmas, and we thank you for Tyler for coming on and playing with us this evening about exactly what makes a Christmas movie and how to spot one even out in the wild. Any last words?
They're very dangerous. You have to be careful when you see them in the wild.
Christmas movies.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate it. And yeah, if the downside of writing a book about Christmas movies is it's unsellable for 10 months of the year. So yeah, please buy it within the next week.
Buy it now. Because
literally, if you order it right now, it might show up before it becomes unreadable for 10 more months. So well, it is a liturgically unsound marketing strategy.
I think this is the truth of everything Christmas, right? It works until it doesn't, and then you have to wait for the next year. So don't miss Mass in the next few days.
I self-published it, but I actually did pitch it to one book publisher, and the person there said, "We don't want to publish a book that can only sell for 2 months out of the year." And I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. It's literally about the movies that people only watch for 2 months of the year, and yet they all want them. When Christmas comes, you have to have your Christmas movies and your Christmas songs and your Christmas books.
So it's really potent for, well, depending on how early you let yourself celebrate it. It's like I started selling the book on November 1st, which some people gave me crap for, but I don't care because.
Well, I think this is an excellent exploration of the problems of all things Christmas. So, thank you, and God bless us, everyone.
God bless.